Well, this is going to be the assembly video on this bed style here. We'll get into that as we go. But this is one of the drawers underneath. It uses the same bed support as the others, okay? And we've been talking about this on the Malm bed because it uses the same support arrangement as a Malm bed. We talked a little bit in the other videos. I'm going to put this at the beginning of this one. Because this uses the same support as a Malm bed and it uses the same basic drawers as a Malm dresser, I'm not going to go into heavy detail on the drawers. I'm mainly going to be going into how the box of this gets assembled. It has drawers on both sides, but as far as the bed support goes, see, this is one of the thicker mattresses and we're using it with the slat arrangement. Now there's another way to set this up with the box spring arrangement or the super skinny mattress arrangement. We did this with the slats in the lower position. You can see how you really wouldn't want it in the upper position. Even though this says it's the box spring, we don't have a box spring on here. This is just the mattress, but it's one of the thicker mattresses. And when you're at the Ikea store, you'll notice there's a lot of different selections for mattresses. Well, when we're looking at this style of bed, and you're, let's say, a heavier person sitting on it, you don't want to be having this right up on your legs or bump into you. But for me, and I'm kind of close to 300 pounds, I'm not running into the wood, okay? I'm not going to stress the wood on this. Some people may want that in a higher position, but you definitely wouldn't do the higher position with a box spring. And so that's something to look at. First stage on this is unpacking, sorting the parts. One of the difficult things in this particular setup is that we're using 3 different sizes of dowels. Now it's kind of indicated in the instructions, but you got to keep on your toes with this. Pretty complex. This is the Brimnes. It uses some parts of the Malm bed, which is shown in another video. The wings go onto this base piece pretty early on, but we got to be careful about not fully securing things because there's a lot of additional pieces going on where you got to be able to lift something up and move it around. I also would stress this bed is very difficult to move around once it's been assembled, so we want to set it up where it's going to go. One of the challenges we have in this location is the homeowner's really paranoid about scratching the floor, so we're doing all this on a cloth. We're setting. Now, these are normally used on a drawer side, which had me thinking we had the wrong parts out. That's one of the reasons we're sorting everything. But these are what's used on here with a double-ended locking mechanism that passes all the way through here. Now, each one of these gets a pair of dowels for alignment. So when all it gets tightened down, this becomes the basis for the rest of the build as it extends out from there. When we put these pieces in and they sink in, that's usually an indication that something's gone wrong, but it's actually right. Whoops. It's actually right on this type of a build. Let's grab those cross pieces. Will be some that go in here. So one of the things we're doing on this too is when we get these side rims in, they sit on the bottoms of it. So that's kind of how it goes. And so a lot of the weight's going to be on that, and that's why it's kind of a wide foot. The owner wants us to add the little felt pads. They're an option over at the Ikea store. So, you know, this is a stage to put those on, or you could do it before you reach this stage. But you really don't want to do it much after this stage, or else the bed's a little bit too heavy and awkward to lift up and move around to put the felt pads on. So we attach these little support brackets. These are going to be holding the sides, just like that. One from each side. Yeah, what it is, we're using these small, shallow screws for that sort of a thing. And remember to get the screw gun to go onto the screw directly straight, and that's what prevents it from stripping stuff off. Okay, so in clipping the 2 ends, we're going to have the one end that's a decorative, usually in a foot. The other end, it's a plane that's going to be at the head. And getting the dowels in the right places is a little tricky here. So what you're looking at is usually when you see a slightly larger hole and a slightly smaller hole in a pair, the slightly larger hole is going to be the dowel, the slightly smaller hole is going to be one of these little lock fasteners. And you'll see how he's working with the screw gun. You get real touchy on the trigger. You don't do that thing where you just bear down on it really hard. Notice how he's going to be really touchy on the trigger, and then go straight in. And then when the shoulder contacts, you're done. Good, excellent. And then you double check your positioning on this with the instructions. But if you watch in a video what the position is on this, you'll get a pretty good idea of how it is supposed to go. What these are going to correspond to are the two positions here. And you can see that where the turn lock fastener goes is on the inboard position. It's a two-man job. One person's going to hold this up where it goes. The other guy takes that turn lock and turns it with gentle pressure as it screws into that threaded stud.
With this. Is this the right kind?
Basically, keep turning it until it grabs.
You understand what I'm saying?
Tightening it down. We have to flip that thing around. That's normal. I'm going to hold gentle pressure. And you can see how it screws up into there. Now, here's where things get a little tricky, is in order to keep things from torquing out of place, one person has to hold this while the other person gets those two screws in place, or else we're going to be torquing it out of shape. So they're down there, the round-headed ones. And the round-headed, yeah, there we go. Now they look a lot like those screws in that the threads are the same, but we're using the round-headed ones on this. And that's just because they have a little bit more bite going on. Now you might have to grab that lower piece and flex it over a little. There we go. And what it is, I'm holding this over here. So. And we'll tighten that one down a little bit. Hold on. So what we do is we got to have spacers in the ones on the ends. And then we get these. And just so you understand, the orientation on that is that the wheel goes forward and down. Okay, so as we get these in, these little cross pieces, it's the same as the mound bed. It's the same on a lot of the Ikea stuff. And so what we're going to do here is, once we just use a piece of the wood, now we've got to make sure not to scratch it on anything, to make sure the bed's square. And so you double and triple check the squareness on the bed, and then tighten those things down. And they're a hassle. You can see they go up from underneath. They actually are threaded. You just can't really tell very easily by looking at them. And this is the part a lot of people just get frustrated and skip. And if you do, it's not the end of the world. But if you can get this in, the bed is going to be much more firm and rigid as far as getting out around and not binding up the drawers underneath and that sort of a thing. If you use a box spring, it almost doesn't matter. This installation is going to use a thick mattress. Now, if you're using a thinner mattress, you would put all this stuff at the upper setting. So that's how that goes. We would be ready to put the mattress on right now, except that we're using the slats instead of a box spring. So we're going to have to go through an additional process to get the cross slats on. And that's one of the things that's kind of optional when you buy these beds, is a modular system of which parts you're going to go with. This is the slat configuration. We're going to put these little tips on. And here you realize they're on the outer side, and we put these little plastic tips in. It's basically a machine thread thing on one side, so you don't use a power tool on this. You just do it by hand, and that's what holds the ends of the slats in place when we roll those out. The style of IKEA drawer, this lends itself to assembly line process when we're doing a bunch at once, especially if you've got a soft surface to work with. Here we're using this bed. When it comes time to do the dresser in here, we'll do it the same way. But basically it's still a turn, lock, and dowel type arrangement, and everything on these pretty much is built off the front of the drawer. So as we get all the hardware in, and then we start at one end, we work on one drawer, and tip it back, work on the next one, tip it back, and work as an assembly line. You can get things done a little more efficiently when you have two people. And this style of bed, really a two-man job, or at least a two-person job. And you'll see a lot of leftover hardware here. That's what's used on the drawers. And we're at the end of the video. I did breeze over the part on the drawers. The drawers are basically the same construction you would find on a Malum dresser. They're just a little bit larger. That's it. You know, they're the same thing as on a Malum dresser, but larger. One of the things to be aware of is that they're not made for a lot of weight. Okay, so if you're gonna put heavy stuff in these, you got a problem. These are really just linen drawers. Okay, if you put a lot of weight in them, you'll kind of cause some damage. And it does have drawers on both sides. The head of the bed and the foot of the bed are nearly identical, except for the foot of the bed has this type of stuff. But if you want that to be smooth, you can simply have the bed turned around. The other thing I gotta stress is very important as an afterthought on this type of arrangement is this has to be built in the room where it will end up. These do not move well. They just don't. They don't move well. They're not likely to hold together all that well when they're being moved intact. Now, as far as the other furniture here, little stuff like that, you know, that can move okay. But to move any of it, if you're going to make an attempt at moving it, make sure you have the drawers removed. Make sure you have the mattress removed. Get as much weight off of it as possible before you move it. And good luck out there.